Let us read Proverbs 26, verses 13 to 16. The sluggard says, "There is a lion in the road, there is a lion in the streets." As a door turns on its hinges, so does a sluggard on his bed. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish. It wears him out to bring it back to his mouth. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. There's a story told about a man who kept postponing fixing a small leak in his roof. Every time it rained, a few drops would fall into a bucket he placed on the floor. Friends advised him to repair it, but he always had a reason ready. "It's raining now, I can't fix it in the rain." And when the sun came out, he would say, "It's not leaking now, so it can wait." Days turned into months and months into years until one day a storm came that the bucket could not contain. What had once been a small inconvenience became a costly disaster. In many ways, that story captures the subtle nature of laziness. It doesn't always appear as outright refusal to work. Often it hides behind reasonable sounding excuses, delayed decisions, and small acts of avoidance that quietly grow into something far more serious. In Proverbs 26:13 to 16, we are given a vivid and almost humorous portrait of the sluggard, the person who has surrendered to laziness. But beneath the humor lies a deeply serious warning. The passage begins with a striking excuse. There is a lion in the road, there is a lion in the streets. It's almost comical. The idea of a lion roaming through the streets is absurd. Yet the sluggard clings to this exaggerated danger as a justification for doing nothing. What this reveals is not just laziness, but a mindset. The sluggard doesn't simply avoid work. He manufactures reasons to avoid it. The obstacle doesn't have to be real. It just has to feel convincing enough to delay action. If we are honest, we may recognize this pattern in our own lives. We may not speak of lions, but we create our own versions. "I'll start tomorrow. I need the perfect time. I'm too tired today." Or "it's just not the right moment." These excuses often sound reasonable, even responsible, but beneath them can lie an unwillingness to act. Laziness is subtle because it disguises itself as logic. It convinces us that delay is wisdom when in reality it is avoidance. The real issue is rarely the external obstacle. It is the internal resistance. The next image deepens the picture. As a door turns on its hinges, so does a sluggard on his bed. Here we see movement without progress. The door swings back and forth, but it never goes anywhere. Likewise, the sluggard shifts, turns, and perhaps even thinks about what needs to be done, but remains in the same place. This is one of the most deceptive forms of laziness. It is not inactivity, but unproductive activity. A person may appear busy, scrolling, planning, rearranging, or even worrying, but nothing meaningful is accomplished. Scripture speaks directly to this danger. Proverbs 20 verse 13 says, "Love, not sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes, and you will have plenty of bread." Proverbs 21:25 adds, "The desire of the sluggard kills him, for his hands refuse to labor." Notice that the sluggard has desires. He wants things to change. He longs for results, but desire alone is not enough. Without action, even the strongest desires remain unfulfilled. This challenges a common misconception in our culture that intention is equal to effort. It is not. We can intend to grow spiritually, to serve others, to pursue our calling, and yet remain stuck if we never take steps forward. Being busy is not the same as being fruitful. Movement is not the same as progress. The third image in Proverbs is even more startling. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish. It wears him out to bring it back to his mouth. This is almost absurd to imagine. A person too lazy to complete even the simplest act of feeding himself. Yet, this exaggeration reveals a profound truth. When laziness takes root, it lowers our tolerance for effort. Tasks that once seemed simple begin to feel overwhelming. What should be easy becomes exhausting. This is how laziness gradually reshapes a person's life. It doesn't happen overnight. It begins with small compromises, putting things off, choosing comfort over discipline, avoiding effort when it feels inconvenient. Over time, those small choices accumulate until even basic responsibilities feel like burdens. Proverbs 19 verse 15 warns, slothfulness casts into a deep sleep, and an idle person will suffer hunger. There is a spiritual principle here. Neglect leads to loss. What we fail to cultivate will eventually diminish. This applies not only to physical work, but also to our spiritual lives. Prayer, reading scripture, serving others. These require intentional effort. When we neglect them, our spiritual vitality weakens, and what once brought life begins to feel distant. Finally, Proverbs exposes the deepest layer of the sluggard's condition. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. Here, laziness is no longer just about behavior, it becomes a matter of the heart. The sluggard is not only inactive, he is self-deceived. He believes his excuses. He considers himself wise even when others can clearly see the problem. This is where laziness becomes truly dangerous. When pride enters the picture, growth stops. Corruption is rejected. Wisdom is ignored. The person becomes trapped, not just in inactivity, but in a false sense of understanding. Pride protects laziness. It whispers, "You're fine as you are. You know better," or "You don't need to change." And as long as that voice is believed, transformation remains out of reach. Taken together, these verses reveal a progression. It begins with excuses, moves into stagnation, deepens into avoidance of effort, and ultimately settles into self-justifying pride. This is why laziness is not a small issue in Scripture. It is not merely about productivity. It is about the posture of the heart. It reflects an unwillingness to steward the time, gifts, and opportunities God has given. In contrast, the Bible consistently commends diligence. Proverbs 10:4 tells us, "A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich." Proverbs 13:4 says, "The soul of the sluggard craves and get nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied." Diligence is not about constant busyness or striving for worldly success. It is about faithfulness. It is about showing up, doing what is right, and persevering even when it is difficult. In the New Testament, this call becomes even clearer. Romans 12 verse 11 urges us, "Do not be slothful in zeal, be fervent in spirit, serve the Lord." Our work, whatever it may be, is ultimately an expression of our devotion to God. Jesus himself illustrated this in the principle of the talents. The servant who buried his talent was rebuked with these words, "You wicked and slothful servant." Matthew 25:26. His failure was not that he lacked ability, but that he failed to act. This reminds us that God is not asking for perfection. He's asking for faithfulness. He has entrusted each of us with time, abilities, and opportunities. The question is not how much we have been given, but what we do with what we have. So, how do we guard ourselves against the subtle trap of laziness? It begins with honest self-examination. We must ask ourselves, where am I making excuses? Where am I delaying what I know I should do? Where have I mistaken activity for progress? It continues with small intentional steps. Laziness thrives in delay, but diligence grows through action. We don't need to fix everything at once. Often the first step is simply to begin, and it requires humility. We must be willing to receive correction, to learn from others, and to admit when we have been avoiding responsibility. Most importantly, we must remember why diligence matters. It is not about earning God's favor. His grace is freely given. Rather, it is about responding to that grace with a life that honors Him. As we close, consider this. What is the lion in the street in your life right now? What excuse has been keeping you from taking a step forward? What small act of obedience have you been postponing? Perhaps it's reconnecting with God through prayer. Perhaps it's pursuing something He has placed on your heart. Perhaps it's addressing an area of responsibility you've been avoiding. Whatever it is, don't wait for the perfect moment. The perfect moment rarely comes. Instead, take the step that is in front of you today. And hold on to this promise. God sees faithfulness. Even the smallest act of obedience matters to Him. As we choose diligence over delay, action over excuse, and humility over pride, we begin to experience the life He intends for us. May we one day hear those words spoken over our lives. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master. Until then, let us be faithful in the small things, trusting that God will use them for His glory and our good. God bless.